So today we are going to talk about Java OCA exam 8, that is 1Z0808, and it has 8 parts. We are today going to talk about Java Basics, and the first part of Java Basics chapter, that is Java Basics is the first part of those 8 parts, and within Java Basics also we have various parts. The first part is Java class structure. We are moving to the second slide. The first part of Java 8 OCA exam syllabus is Java Basics. Approximately 10 to 15% questions in the OCA exam, it comes from here, and it's got various things. One is Java class structure, second is main method, then we have access modifiers, that is public, protected, private, default access, etc. Then scope and lifetime of variables, and whether they are, what kind of variables those are, local, instance, static, etc, etc. Then we have packages and imports. You can import other packages or libraries. And then Java features like why Java is platform independent, then object-oriented principles, and garbage collection. So let's start with Java class structure. What is a Java source file basically? A Java source file, which is basically a text file, and it has got various class definitions. The class definition is a must to produce a bytecode. The compiler Javac, it converts each class into a separate .class file containing bytecode, and every Java program starts as a source file. The 3 parts of a Java source file are basically one, the package declaration, the import statements, and finally the class declarations. So if we go to the code section here, we'll see here we have a employee class, and we see that the name of the class is employee, right? But the file itself is also known as employee, is called employee.java. Because it's a public class. If it were not a public class, in that case it would not have mattered. But it's a public class, and so the employee, capital E employee, must match with capital E employee Java. So what does it have? We are going to discuss all this in nitty-gritties in big details later. So what does it have, this particular class? So as you see, it's just a text file, right, called java.java. So it's got a package com.company.hr or something. So this is just to create its workspace. You can say that certain files will be kept in certain areas. In a company we have HR, we have operations, we have coding, development, the various departments, right? So one of that is HR. So if employee belongs to HR, so we have kept in a package called company.hr. It could have been company.it, company.java, whatever, right? But because this employee class basically as of now, this employee belongs to HR department, so we have kept it in the package HR. So, and we can import various libraries, and like we have imported array list and local date, etc, etc. And if those functions that are, these are basically huge libraries of code, and certain functions are available in them. Those are written by Java only, Oracle, and to utilize them we have to import them. In certain cases we don't need to import them, like if you have system.out.println, you don't have to import anything. But to use, in this case we are using array list and things like that, which we'll be using later on, so we have to import them. So this is the second part, as you see. So package, then import, and then the public. We forget about public, we have class, right? So these are basically the pillars of a source file, Java source file, right? We have to remember the package, import, and class. Now if we go back here, so 3 parts like we package, import, and class, right? So we have to remember a few critical rules for the OCA exam. So in a file we can have only one public class. You cannot have more than one public class in a file. And file name must match the public class name exactly, like we showed, right? Employee class in capital E, that's matching the employee class, employee.java, right? That's also in capital. It just cannot be small e or something else, something else as the name of the class. It has to match, the file name must match the public class name exactly, if there is a public class in the file. Now if you don't have public classes there, then the names can be different. But if it is not, if there is a public class, the name must match the public class's name, ditto. and there can be multiple, you can have one public class, along with that you have multiple classes which are non-public, and that's allowed in a single file. There's no problem in it, right? And each, when they are compiled, right, so each one, it produces its own .class file. That's the bytecode. Second part of the critical rules for this, reversing the order, that you cannot have, what did you say? We said that package is first and then import is next, right? But if you want to write like imports first, package second, or class before imports, that will not work. So it will cause a compilation error. But comments can appear anywhere. You can put them in the middle, you can put them at the top. They don't really affect the ordering rules. And a field or method cannot exist outside a class body. Everything must be inside a class, right? Like if we want to show here, here, right, you have a field and other things, so it has to be here. This field cannot be just here, right? It has to be within a class. Similarly, if you write a method here which we have not written here, it's preliminary, so that also has to be within this class only, employee class or any other class. It just cannot exist here, right? So there are various kind of variables we'll be discussing later, but this we have to understand it now. Okay, so we go back here. A few traps that comes in the OCA exam, right? If we see, right, just now we discussed the import, then package, then class. It will not work. Will it compile? No, because package must be first here, import has to be second. Package must come before import, so it will not compile. Say you have another code in the same file, public class A and public class B, will that compile? It will not compile, because here we have two public classes. You just cannot have two public classes in a single source Java source file, only one public class per file. Then the third one, we have a file called test.java, and it has a public class called test. It's test, but you see that it's not caps, right? It's small t, so it will not compile. Case mismatch, test small t versus capital T. Then we have test.java, this thing, test.java contains class test, class demo. Will this compile? It will compile, because they are not public classes, right? So even if they don't match the test.java, it's fine. There's no public class here. And comment you can put anywhere. Comments can appear before the package. So what must be in a source file to compile? This is our first question, right? Which of the following must be included in a Java source file to compile and generate bytecode? So we have, it's a question of must. What has to be there? Package declaration, class declaration, import statement, main method, field declaration, right? Field is the, and then method, import, class, declaration. The answer is only class declaration, because package declaration is not a must. We'll discuss later in details, but class is required because it has to produce the bytecode. Import not required for system.out.println and things like that. You don't need import. And package also, even if you don't declare, it becomes a default package. Then main method not required for compilation. It's required for running, for program execution, not for compilation process itself. Field declaration not required. A class can exist as an empty class without any field declaration and still compile successfully, no issues. So now we are coming to example 2. Source file structure rules is the topic of the example. So the question is, which of the following statements about Java source file is true? A says a Java source file can contain multiple public classes. A Java source file can have only one public class, and the file name must match that class name, which is true. And the file name must match any class in the file, not necessarily in the public one. D says if the class is in default package or is package private. I'm going to explain more on this. Any file can be used, and private classes don't need to match the file name. What does it mean, default package? So a default package says that a class is not declared in any package, right? So there is no package when the class is written or is declared. It doesn't have any package name given. And what is package private? So it is a separate issue. It's not default package. Package private means the access level. So the class doesn't have any access level, like public, protected or private, etc. So it is accessible only within the same package. So that is the difference, right? So if we go through the answers of these, then we shall see that option B is the correct one, because a Java source file can only have one public class, right? And the file name must match that of the class name. If it is a capital T test.java, then the class name also must be capital T test. And can it contain multiple public class? No. The file name must match any class in the, it's not necessarily correct, because only the public one, right? It has to match. It can have multiple classes, but only it has to match the public one. And if the class is in default package or package private, any file name can be used, which is not correct, because the package and if a class is declared public, the source file name must match the public class name only fully, and regardless of whether the class is in the default package or named package. The default package does not relax any file name rule. The package, whether it's default or named, has no impact on file name rules. So option D is also false, and option E is false because top level classes cannot be declared private in Java. It has to be default or public. So it cannot be a private class. It's a top level if it's a top level class. So now we move to example 3. Here the topic is how many classes per file, right? So question is how many classes can a Java source file contain and what are the restrictions? So we have to focus on this question, right? That what are the restrictions that are there? So various options are given. Multiple classes are allowed, but only one can be public, which is correct. And then only one class per file is allowed, which is not true. You can have multiple classes, but one has to be public for this Java source file, right? I mean, that also, the third one is multiple public classes are allowed if they are in the same. It's not true. Then the fourth question is number of classes with no restrictions is unlimited. It's not correct. There is a restriction that there has to be only one public class, and here the option E is only 2 classes per file is allowed, right? Which is not true. So we see that correct answer is A, and explanation is a Java source file can contain one package statement, then multiple import statements and multiple class or interface declarations. However, only one class in the file can be declared public, and the file name must match that public class name exactly. All other classes in the file must have default package access and default package that is package private access. It must not be public for them. For example, if a file is named main.java, it can legally contain public class main. Then we can have other classes like class helper, class utility, but they are not public, right? So this allows related helper classes to be grouped together with the main public class, right? Okay, we move to the next question, example 4, and here the topic is valid top level class declaration. So question is, which of the following is a valid top level class declaration? Options, class example, bracket, first bracket, second bracket. Now here the problem is it's not a class, right? I mean, this is not a valid declaration. This comes, this first bracket, second bracket, it comes with a method, not a class. Or if nothing is here, it becomes a constructor. So it's not a class declaration. Then we come to static class demo, then protected class demo, then class when. So only class when meets the criteria. Why? Coming to that. So a top level class in Java can only use modifiers public or default, no other modifier. A top level class cannot be declared protected or private because these access levels apply only to inner classes. And the keyword static is also not allowed on a top level class because static applies only to nested inner classes. So option A is invalid because the parentheses are not valid syntax for a class declaration. And then option B is also invalid because static is not allowed as a top level class. Option C is invalid because protected is not allowed for top level classes. Option D is valid because it uses default access and follows all Java syntax rules. So option D is valid, right?